Chester, Elton, you're most welcome to the Handshake. I'm honored to have you, someone of your eminence and your experience and expertise, as a guest on the show. Now, just to give a little bit to our listeners on your achievements to date, a prolific writer, multiple award-winning New York Times and #1 Wall Street Best Journal selling author on leadership. Your titles, to my mind, bespeak your interests in the human at work and on all levels. You co-author with Adrian Gustick, yeah? And all in one, the carrot principle, leading with gratitude, anxiety at work, best team wins, the 24-carat manager. I love these titles. They're so expressive. And what motivates me? And the invisible employee, using cards to see the hidden potential in everyone in the workplace. A must read, CNN say, and the culture works, which many of our listeners may be familiar with, is led by yourself and co-author Adrian, and is a recognized influencer in that world of organizational cultural transformation. You've made many appearances in many of the leading US and Canadian shows, am I right?
Absolutely.
And you've dedicated so many years to helping some of the world's most successful businesses engage their employees to execute on strategy, vision, values, etc. So I'm sure that doesn't hit half it. Would you like to add anything to that by way of introduction, Elton?
Yes, I'm going to celebrate 42 years of marital bliss. It's Valentine's Day today. We should mention those we love. I'm the proud father of 4 exceptional children and 4 even more exceptional grandchildren. So that rounds it out for you.
So the legacy will live on.
I'm hoping.
So let's delve into some of these questions that I have lined up to help our listeners get to know you better, and in the end, to give you the opportunity to leave your details if anybody would like to get in touch with you. Your research to date shows gaps between leaders knowing gratitude works and actually practicing it effectively. So what, in your opinion, are the psychological barriers that prevent the well-intentioned leaders from expressing their gratitude with ease?
That's a great question, Teresa. And by the way, thank you for having me on your show. I'm honored. I love the work that you're doing, and you gave me some background, and I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you.
This idea of knowing and then doing, I think we have this problem in a lot of things we do, right? We know we should eat better, but we don't, right? We know we should exercise more, but we don't. I think as leaders, we know inherently that people need to be valued and appreciated. We let things get in the way. Now, I just returned from a wonderful keynote and workshop with a hotel group out in Turks and Caicos, which, by the way, if you've never been, it's beautiful. It's the Waterloo Management Company, and they've started to really focus on their human capital, their environment, their culture of gratitude. So we had this exercise, and we asked the question, why don't leaders recognize more? If I were to ask you that, what do you think are some of the barriers that managers, or I like to say excuses, leaders and managers give for not giving more recognition? What would you say from your background, Teresa?
I would say ego gets in the way. I think a perception that they shouldn't get too close or too familiar or be too approachable. There's a confidence thing as well. And not really knowing what's expected from them while they would let it be known to the employees what they expect from them. That notion of 360-degree feedback puts the fear of God into a lot of leaders. So it's a concoction of these things.
I agree. A lot of leaders are insecure. If I give my team a lot of praise, they'll get big heads, they'll expect raises and promotions. And if they're so good, what do you need me for, right? And so there is an ego thing there. Interesting, which is all valid, by the way. Some of the answers that came out were interesting. Say, well, the organization doesn't make it a priority. If I'm not measured on that, why would I bother doing it? It's perceived as a soft skill, a nice to have, not a must have. right?
Mhm.
The biggest excuse, and by the way, my dad was great at teaching us all poems and sayings and quotes. And one of his favorite quotes was, excuses, even when valid, are never impressive, right?
Good.
Excuses,
So
even
true.
when valid, are never impressive. The number one reason was time. I don't have time. We're doing a lot of things here. We're short
Mhm.
staffed. Our,
Mhm.
our clients, our customers are very demanding. I would do more if I had more time.
Yes.
And which is really the worst of all excuses. I love, my co-author Adrian Gostick and I. We are executive coaches. In fact, we were honored this year by Thinkers 50 as being rated as two of the top 50 executive coaches in the world.
Well
Which,
done.
yeah,
Excellent.
well, and you would think that with that, my children would ask me for more advice, but they don't.
You're never a gift, a prophet at home. Yeah, go on.
Exactly. So here's what's really interesting, and I love to do this with executives I coach. I say, so you don't have time to recognize great work, to praise the good things that are going on. I said, how much time do you have if somebody on your team makes a mistake?
Mhm.
When someone really messes up, how much time have you got for them now? Is, I'm on that right away. I'm on that in a New York minute, right? So isn't it interesting that we find the time for corrective coaching, and yet we find it hard to find time to reinforce good behavior? So the answer to your question, Teresa, is it needs to be a part of your culture, right? It
Mhm.
needs to be valued in the culture.
Mhm.
And I had a friend tell me, he says, don't ever say, I'm going to make time, because you can't make time. If we could make time, there'd be, 72 hours in a day, right?
Mhm.
You have to find the time. So it has to be a priority. It has to be
Mhm.
valued in the organization.
Mhm.
And you need to make it a part of your rituals. You need to make it a part of your leadership style. Now, what's really interesting is Adrian and I really took a deep dive, and we said, well, how much time does it really take?
Mhm.
And we studied the best leaders, like those that really did it well. And it was about an hour and a half a week. That's all it
My,
was.
my. Yeah, yeah.
You span that over 5 days, that's like 20 minutes a day.
Mhm.
Finding, seeing what's going on, expressing that gratitude.
Mhm.
We have some wonderful organizations we've worked with. One was an optical company up in Canada.
Mhm.
They instituted a 10 and 10. 10 minutes at the beginning of the day, 10 minutes at the end of the day,
Yeah.
where you gather the team, you collect up great stories, you celebrate
To
success.
that level. Yeah,
There was
yeah.
a hospital down in Dallas, Texas, in the States, Methodist hospital, right?
Mhm.
Spiritually based. They call it the Sacred 60, where the managers were required, again, emphasis by the leadership, to leave their cell phones, leave their laptops in their office, and just walk around and talk to their people for 60 minutes a day. So you can build it in. And so all the reasons why people don't do it are excuses that are rarely valid.
Yeah, yeah.
You've got to make it a discipline. Look, if you want to be good at something, you need to get in your what we call reps, your repetitions,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The more
But
you
it's
do
the
it, the better you
pace.
get.
The pace of the work environment has changed, hasn't it? And people seem there is an unspoken angst to get things done, keep things moving, but they miss the time to even lock eyes with somebody when speaking with them. They're always in a hurry. So there's a loss in all of that, isn't there?
Yes, and again, it's just how do you want to be remembered?
Yeah.
What is your brand as a leader?
Mm-hmm.
I love the great Stephen Covey, who wrote the Seven
Yes.
Habits of Highly Effective People. How are you building meaningful relationships at work?
Mm-hmm.
How are you developing a career that's meaningful to you and that you love?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I've never heard anybody on their deathbed say, geez, I wish I'd spent more time at work.
At work. Yeah, yeah. True. And he also is big on the one of listening for meaning, listening for understanding. He claims that once you're speaking to somebody, you spend half your time formulating the reply without engaging fully to hear what they do have to say, which is very true. But a lot of his main ideas, begin with the end in mind. All of these things were phrases that I would have heard my parents preach at us when we were growing up. It's very cleverly couched, though he does his work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in an era of remote work and digital transformation, how can leaders maintain what you call managing to the one, that personal connection with individual team members, drivers, and motivations?
Yes, again, for me on that, particularly if you can't meet face to face. By the way, I'm still a big fan of gathering people together. As long as it's safe and you don't have, an outbreak of the bird flu or whatever.
Yeah.
There's something magical about breathing the same air, right? And ideating and even eating together. I think you want to get to know somebody, have a meal. It
Mhm.
engages all five senses, right? Um, I had a friend from Switzerland. He was visiting, and we invited him into our home for dinner. And his son said to him, "Dad, this is a big deal. They're inviting you into their home.
Mhm.
They're going to feed you. Wow, this is really an honor. And I
Yeah.
thought he's right. That is. I digress a little bit. The point is if you've got remote, you're in Ireland and you've got a remote employee in Malaysia. Your odds of getting together frequently are zero.
Mhm.
So the frequency in which you touch base becomes very important.
Sure.
Remote employees, because they're not in the headquarters or the main office, they're working out of their home or they're working out of temporary office space or whatever. It's easy to feel forgotten.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah,
And I've
exactly.
heard that cited in relation to people missing opportunities for promotion, etc. If they have a tendency to work mainly from home, they get out of the gist of what's going on at base.
Yeah. And so here's the point is make it a point to have regular communication, regularly touching base.
Sure.
And by the way, it doesn't always have to be about business. It's okay to say, "Hey, just checking in. How are your resources? How's the family doing? What's top of mind for you?
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
going on?" And little simple random acts of kindness go a long way,
Mhm.
depending on where you are. Listen, I've got leaders that are really great about sending a gift in the mail, right? A little digital gift card for a coffee or you know what?
Yeah.
Was just
It's
thinking about you. Lunch is on me. Here's the menu. It's all set up. Order something.
wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Little
It's the
things like
personal
that.
touch. Yeah.
And by the way, this is a fairly recent phenomenon, I think, is that when you're connecting with your remote employees, and sometimes it's a group, right? You might have a group of 10 or 20 that are gathered together on a Zoom call.
Mhm.
Make sure everybody turns on their camera.
Oh, yeah.
There's this new thing where I'll join, but I'm not going to turn on my camera. Well,
Oh, and nothing as bad as giving a talk or training to a group where half them don't turn on the camera. It's like talking to the wall.
yeah, and you're never really sure what they're doing, right?
Mm.
Are they working on another project? Are they answering their emails? And so, any little things you can do to create that engagement. A friend of mine says, the way you spell love is Time.
Mhm.
Give people your time. So, if you've got remote employees, make sure you've got regular check ins. And it
Mm.
doesn't have to be for an hour. You say, listen, just have you got 5 minutes? Just want to check in, see how things are going. Give me an update. Have you got what you need?
And
Right?
that's becoming so much more important as we go deeper into the AI field, isn't it? AI for personalized employee experiences, etc. It's becoming more and more important to keep the human hand in there.
Sure. And by the way, ask your people, um, how often do you want me to check in? Is
Yeah.
it once a week? Is it once every 2 weeks? Is it once a
Mhm.
month? You know, um, the old adage, know your players, right? Know your team.
Yeah,
And some need more attention than others. We're seeing this in the generational differences, right?
sure.
Younger employees, and it's so funny because my generation, right? There's a group of us that say "Ugh, they're so high maintenance. They're just bugging me all the time.
Well, it's a
They're
two-way
so they're,
highway.
they're
They're
so
looking at
needy.
you. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
looking at you and saying, "I wish to God they get more tech savvy." I mean, they're old
yeah.
hat, old school.
And here's the difference, Teresa, and I really believe this is that you know because we're in the digital age and because of technology, you know, when I grew up at work, you'd get to work by 8, you'd leave at 6, and no one could get a hold of you after 6 o'clock. You were in
Sure.
the
That
wind,
was
right?
good. That was good. Yeah.
Yeah, now you can always get a hold of somebody, and I wake up at if I wake up in the middle of the night for whatever reason at 4 a.m., I can call my friends in London. It's 9 o'clock. They're up.
Sure, sure.
So this idea of leaders, how are you leading? And the younger generations coming in, they don't just want a leader that's going to make them a better worker bee. They want leaders that are going to help them grow and develop skills and talents, and
Mhm.
not just at work. And this is a huge shift, Teresa. They
Sure.
want leaders to help them become better people.
Mhm.
Now that is a big leader. Say, hey, wait a minute. I am
It's
not.
a real departure, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a priest. I'm not a rabbi. I'm not a
Mm.
counselor. The thing is, actually, you are. You know,
Mhm.
fewer people are going to church. Fewer people are joining organizations. A friend of mine did a study, and he said, gosh, there used to be all these bowling leagues and softball leagues
Sure,
and
sure.
football leagues and so on, and they're dissipating because people are spending so much time online. Um, from the 50s to now, and I'll give you North America because that's where I
Mhm.
live, but the population has tripled. You
Wow.
know, now here's the thing. Do you know what the number one mental health issue in North America is right now? It's loneliness.
Loneliness.
I know.
Loneliness. It's
Well,
worldwide.
there's
Worldwide.
there's more people than ever. And so, how
Mhm.
could you be lonely? It's so interesting. I used to work in New York City, which is just jam packed, right?
Mhm.
And they'd say, busiest city in the world, loneliest people you'll ever meet. I thought,
Absolutely. Loneliness in a crowd. Yeah.
right. So this point of making connections,
Mhm.
being a teacher and a mentor.
Mhm.
Just recently, the number one reason that younger employees are leaving work for the first time in 30 years is not pay, it's development.
Development, or as they say, they leave their manager, not their work.
Well, that's true. And is the manager, right? Is that manager a teacher and a mentor? You think of the people over and above your family that had the biggest impact on you. It's almost always there was a teacher that believed in you, a mentor, a coach. And
Which
they weren't
takes me to the point, it's so important to get the right person in the right job. To the
uh,
person job
that
fit
is
is
true.
so important.
Yeah.
Sorry, I stopped you there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So your work emphasizes the link between gratitude and employee retention. So, we hear in the media this thing of the quiet quitting phenomenon that's going on. How can leaders use recognition to build or rebuild that psychological contract with disengaged employees?
Yeah, and listen, the numbers are very simple, right?
Mm,
We did this study with Willis Towers Watson, and
mm,
and Gallup has done much of this work as well. That employees that receive regular praise and recognition stay longer. I
of
mean,
course.
it's that simple. You know, if you're getting almost no recognition, the odds of turnover are quite high.
Mhm.
If you're getting a frequent recognition, now Gallup would say at least once every 7 days. I would say that's probably not enough anymore,
Mm.
right? Regular touching base. And if you've got frequent recognition in the workplace, 70% of employees say, yeah, I'm more likely to stay if I feel valued, seen, and appreciated. I mean,
That's the Hawthorne effect, as we call it. Mayo did some interesting studies on that way back in the 1930s. GE Electric, where they
right.
found their production was going down, down, down. So they took out a sample group and put them in ideal conditions, chatted to them, and got them to take them through the procedure, their work, etc., praised them, etc., and production went through the roof. And they concluded that it was the attention given and the time given to listen to opinions
Yeah.
that actually made them feel important, and the work. When they put them back in on the factory floor, they positively affected those around them and work. They retained that standard of high production.
Yeah. And this isn't, this is common sense, right? I mean, think about your personal relationships, right?
Sure.
If you want to build a meaningful relationship, appropriate that we're talking about it on Valentine's Day, right? I mean, think about people you really care about. If you decided that the way you were going to nurture this relationship was at the end of every year, you were going to have a year end banquet and tell your spouse that you loved them,
Mhm.
and that was the only time you were going to tell them you love them,
Wouldn't
odds
be
are
very
you're not,
effective.
yeah, you're not going to hit that 3 year anniversary, right?
Yeah.
Um, we do it often. And one of the
Mm.
things that we teach is you say, look, you see somebody doing something well, tell them now. So do it now. Primacy, recency. you know,
That's right. Yes, yes,
and
yes.
do it often. And if you're doing it right, you can't hear it too much. I love to use the analogy. If you're in a really meaningful relationship, can you hear I love you too much? You
Mhm,
can't.
mhm.
And I always make the joke that, look, it's I love you in your personal life. It's thank you in the workplace. Don't get that mixed up, right? You'll cause HR all kind of problem, right?
Mhm.
So you do it now, you do it
Same
often,
principles. Yeah.
right? Now be specific about it though. General praise doesn't mean anything. You're doing great, you're doing great, you're doing great. Doing great what?
Attach it to an act or to an action or a success.
Yes, and tie it to the value. This is what
Yeah.
customer service looks like.
Yes.
This is what innovation looks like, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm,
then be sincere. People know when you don't mean it. And
mhm.
specificity helps with that,
Of
right?
course.
So, and work on that cadence. And again, the younger generations coming into the workplace are used to a lot of interaction. Video games. I love the study that was done on Mario Brothers. You get a positive affirmation about 300 times every minute.
Mhm,
Every
mhm.
minute. And so, you come into the workplace and you're lucky if your boss checks in once a week. Well, that's
Yeah.
not enough.
Yeah. 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 That's true. That's
And
true.
back to retention. Look, if I'm in a meaningful relationship, I know people care about me. I'm getting affirmation. I'm seen and I'm heard. The odds of me leaving are much less. And that's just common sense. Again, it's a discipline. Are
Mm.
you finding the time?
You hear of people turning down promotions to other companies where they're happy where they are, and that's proof of they're doing something right. I suppose the workplace becomes it's your daytime family, really, if you're spending a lot of time with other people.
Yeah. Well, again, back to studies. This one I think was from Gallup,
Mhm.
where high producing employees, highly engaged employees have a best friend in the workplace. Well,
Right.
that's your community.
That's it. That's it.
Listen, you spend way more time at work than you're going to spend anywhere
Mm.
else.
Yeah,
It,
yeah,
it would make sense that if you can create a great culture
yeah.
of
It's all about the
of
culture, isn't it? Yeah.
gratitude and appreciation, you're going to be more likely to stay. Sure.
So, what's the most counterintuitive finding about how great cultures maintain human connection while driving the business results?
Look, I think it's as old as human relations is. If your people know that you care about them,
Yeah.
that's what matters. We did some wonderful work with the Avis Budget Rental Car Company,
Mhm.
and they had a mantra that was, the customer experience will never exceed the employee experience. If you want your employees to treat your customers with respect and good humor and so on, you need to treat them that way,
Yeah, they'll mirror
right?
what they experience themselves. Yeah.
Sure. So I always love it when there's these mission, visions, and values, and they're always really good about mentioning the stockholders, right? The stockholders always get in there. Um, if the value of your employees and the way you treat your employees, if that isn't first and foremost, you're making a huge mistake,
Mm.
because your employees are the ones that have to execute that. I call it the ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
If you've got a great culture that values people, and by the way, I just want to take a minute. If you're listening, you're saying, "Oh, look, this is all soft stuff."
Mm.
It's not. It's hard stuff. Look, just because you're a leader that expresses a lot of gratitude doesn't mean you don't push people. You think back on that great teacher that you had, that great mentor, maybe a coach.
Mhm.
They pushed you hard, and
But
they
you
praised
delivered.
and they praised you often,
Mhm,
and you loved them for it. It's
mhm,
this isn't, oh, if I give a lot of recognition,
mhm,
people will take advantage of me.
mhm, mhm,
We talk often about, look, you want to encourage effort, you reward results.
mhm.
It's about performance.
I think there's a major shift happening in that direction, though. Do you think? In
Yeah.
recent times.
Well, you would hope. I mean, I'm still amazed at how many organizations say, look, the bottom line's the bottom line. They call it work for a reason. Get
Mhm.
your work done. You get a little recognition every 2 weeks in your paycheck. Don't burden me with what's going on at home. I honestly don't care. I got my own problems.
And do you think that companies call somebody like you in only when they're in trouble or feel that there's trouble? Is it becoming more a thing to have speakers come in, have trainers come in on a regular basis, investing in their employees?
Actually, that's a great question, Teresa. And the answer to that is, the companies that are in trouble, the companies that don't do it well, never call me.
Really?
They never call because it's not important to them. The companies that call me to work with them are people that know it's important. They've already got a pretty good culture and they want to make it better. They see the value and they double down on it. I always love it when I speak at an association. You got 80 companies in the room. And somebody will always come up and say, "Oh, could you talk to my CEO? Our culture is so toxic." And I just smile and say, "Your CEO will never talk to me because they don't believe in it
He
and they
thinks
don't
he's
care."
doing great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They say, "Look, we're making a profit. His stock is going to vest next year." And so people say, "Oh, so tell me the biggest turnaround you've ever done." I go, "Never happens."
But I think the most toxic can be the big ones who are too big to fail in their own heads.
Well, here's the
Are you
thing,
ever too
Teresa.
big to fail?
No, you're never too big. Listen, big companies fail all the time.
Mm,
That's the biggest myth out there. You get
yeah.
acquired, industry change, AI comes in, innovation, and you're out of business. It's interesting. The Good to Great book. These
Yes,
uh,
yes.
half those companies are out of business. Yeah, I mean, one of the big examples they gave was Circuit City. This amazing, they're gone. You can lose it in a hurry. Here's my point: is even in big organizations, right? As a leader, you create a culture on your team.
Hmm.
Control what you can control.
Hmm.
So even though the larger organization may not care, I've got a nephew that works in a huge organization that was in the news for a lot of things as being fairly toxic.
Hmm.
Well, I engaged with his team a few times. His team loves him and loves the work they do, and they are extraordinary in their results. So he was able to create the culture in his group.
So he was, yes, despite the toxicity around them, his group, and hopefully they will fan out that good feel.
Sometimes, sometimes, the old idea is control what you can control.
Yeah,
A dear friend of mine is Marshall Goldsmith. He wrote a
sure.
wonderful book called "What Got You Here Won't Get You There," and he's become a wonderful mentor to me. I always laugh. I go, "Marshall, I get why I would want to be with you. I just don't get why you'd want to be with
And to be
me."
with me.
Anyway, he said, never forget the golden rule, and the golden rule is the guy with the gold makes the rules. So you're in a big organization, the CEO or the founder or whoever may not care. That's okay. That's their prerogative.
Mhm.
You can control what you can control. You can control the psychological
Very
safety,
good
the
place.
emotional safety, the culture of caring and gratitude on your team. And don't worry about the rest because you can't control it anyway.
And that notion of having healthy debate and having the difficult conversations and all, it requires a culture of psychological safety where everybody feels that they can speak without suffering the consequences if it's something negative they have to say. How do you advise companies in that?
Yeah, another very insightful question. Thank you. It's
Mm.
the example that I love to use is the company WD-40. I usually have a little can of it somewhere here, but anyway, it's that
Then I
blue
know
and
it.
yellow with the red cap, and
Mm.
so WD-40 stands for Water Displacement 40th Formula. So their philosophy at WD-40 is we don't make mistakes, we have learning moments.
Right.
And it's baked into their name. He says, "Did we make 39 mistakes before we got to 40? Well, we had 39 learning moments. We had
Yes.
39, Edison, they said it took you 10,000 tries or whatever it was to get it right. He says, you made 10,000 mistakes. He says, well, actually, we just found 10,000 ways that didn't work.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah. But that's
so
all the attitude, the attitude, the cultural thing, in the States and in Canada, we would always say here in this neck of the woods that you're admired when you fail. Just go and you try again and you eventually succeed.
yeah,
Where
yeah,
other cultures have a different attitude to failure.
yeah, be innovative, but it better work.
Yeah,
So
it's a
this
mindset. Mm.
this idea of a safe space that say, look, as long as we're learning, it's
Yeah.
okay. Now,
Mhm.
if somebody's making the same mistake over and over and over again, that's a different conversation, obviously. This idea, though, that we're a learning organization creates a lot of safety.
Mhm.
So, maybe the timing wasn't right, maybe the resources weren't right, the market wasn't right. So let's figure it out. This one didn't work. Why? Why didn't it
Mhm.
work?
Mhm.
I always admire the military is very disciplined in so many ways, right? And by the way, it does recognition better than anybody with the ribbons and the medals and the
Sure.
ceremonies. This idea that, after every engagement, they ask four core questions. One is, what did we set out to do? And then what happened?
Mhm.
Rarely, particularly in military, does the engagement go as planned.
Mhm.
You might be familiar. He's a wonderful American philosopher named Mike Tyson. Have you ever heard of Mike Tyson?
Yes, of course I have. Yes.
Yeah, he says, look, all the strategy goes out the window when somebody punches you in the face. So what did we set out to do?
Respond.
What happened? Then, what did we learn?
Mhm.
And then lastly, what are we going to take forward? In other words, what did we learn that we're going to apply next time?
Excellent. Yeah, yeah.
And those are wonderful. We often forget to reflect on what happened,
Sure.
what went well.
So, as we move forward in the AI world and team membership changes, and a team member might maybe an AI algorithm, what effect is it going to have on the actual human team working alongside the technological team that's emerging?
Well, I think the speed of work is going to really accelerate.
Mm.
The speed of innovation work is as slow now as it's ever going to be. It's only going to ramp up, and AI is this tremendous tool to get things done. I have friends that work in finance here in New York. I live just outside New York in the state of New Jersey,
Mhm.
and it's really interesting. They put together a bid. It was a merger bid, and there's all kinds of legal and paperwork. What would normally take them about 6 weeks with a team of about 20 people, AI did in about 30 minutes.
Gee,
And it was, by the way, it was about 90% accurate. So
wow,
there was still the 10% that they needed to work on. Think about that for a minute, though, where you could take a 6-week project and boil it down to a day.
sure.
So, I mean, and by the way, innovation has always been disruptive.
Yeah.
I remember, this is how old I am. I remember when fax machines came in, and I was in sales, and they said, "Don't you dare fax a proposal to a buyer." And I said, "Well, we've got a decision to make then. She needs it in the next 10 minutes. And there's no way I can get from where I am to where she is,
In 10
sit
minutes.
down and go through it with her in the next 10 minutes. So, do you want to be included in the buy or not?"
Mhm,
Right?
mhm.
It's like, people are always wary. Well, elevators, they're you should, if real people take the stairs. Look, AI is now, it's never been more radical because you've got a thinking entity. I've got a friend that doesn't call it, artificial intelligence. He calls it alien intelligence. He says you're inviting an alien intelligence into your life.
Mhm, mhm.
The way you use it is up to you. You know, the human element is going to be there. It always will be. So how do you use that, and how do you make sure that you're using it in a way that's, teaching, that it's fulfilling, and it's making people's lives better, right?
Sure. I think it's up to the human to upskill, to know what they're handling, and to have the confidence to make the best use of AI. Obviously, there'll be a lot of job displacements, but there will be other job creations, won't there?
There always is. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But many organizations are struggling with this rapid change and uncertainty. How does gratitude serve as a stabilizing force during organizational change?
Yeah. So our latest big book that we published is called Anxiety at Work.
Mhm.
How do you build resilience, handle uncertainty, and get things done, right? And the interesting thing about gratitude is in when there's all this uncertainty. By the way, uncertainty is the number one cause of anxiety in the workplace. I just don't know what's going on. So you need to up your communication, right? How's the company doing? Where are we going? How are you doing? Where are you going? You answer those four questions,
Mhm.
and on a regular basis, not just once a year, right?
Sure.
This is regular check-ins. And this whole idea of using gratitude to calm people down, to make sure people feel valued.
It's an anchor.
Yeah, is more important than ever. I'll tell you, humans can't hold two emotions at the same time. You can't be anxious and you can't be grateful at the same time. So you create, rituals, you create symbols, you create tokens that keep people centered. And it makes for a more calm workplace, a more engaged workplace, and a more innovative workplace. I've got a wonderful little tradition that I do around gratitude, and it's lovely, actually. A lot of people think it's goofy. I think it's lovely. I never leave the house when I don't have 3 or 4 of these little. I should find one where you can read it better. It says gratitude on it.
Lovely, yeah.
It's a little gratitude stone.
Stones, yeah.
And what I do is, I'll give you a perfect example. I was taking a long flight. I was on the aisle. There was a flight attendant doing a fabulous job. And flight attendants are getting abused a lot these days. And I don't understand that, why people cannot be kind, right? Anyway, I said, Barbara, listen, I just want to let you know you're doing a fabulous job and you've got $1 million smile. And she said, I'll tell my dentist. She's really cute. Well, at the end of the flight, I said, you know what, Barbara, I've got a little something for you. Have you heard of the good luck gratitude stone? She goes, no, I've never heard of that. I said, well, these stones are all different and they're all flawed, like people are. But a stone in the pond makes the water ripple, like simple acts of kindness, simple acts of gratitude, like your wonderful service and your wonderful smile. Now, you keep this stone in your pocket to remind yourself that no matter how hard it gets, there's always something to be grateful for. And over time, it'll bring you good luck. I said, but the thing is it has to be gifted to you. She goes, really? And I said, yeah. And this one's for you. And she took it and she said, you have no idea how much this means to me.
Wow.
We take a lot of abuse in my job. And at this point, she had knelt down next to my chair and she was really intently listening. She got a little emotional. She said, thank you so much. This means so much to me. And then she kissed me on the cheek.
Isn't that lovely? You made her day, and she'll carry it in her pocket and touch it with the next time she's in trouble with the customer. Yeah.
So, and they're all different. They're all flawed. And, it's one of those simple little rituals. Now, I want to share with your listeners, because I know we're almost at time here.
Sure.
A wonderful thing that they can do, and it costs you nothing. Go to thepowerofkind.org. Thepowerofkind.org. It's this wonderful organization that believes that one kind act a day can change the world. And they'll give you a pledge. You take a pledge that you're going to perform one simple random act of kindness a day. And they'll send you little texts to give you suggestions and ideas. And it's all free. It's been funded in perpetuity by this wonderful gentleman named Khosrow Simnani. I would also encourage you to go to our website, thecultureworks.com. Follow me on LinkedIn. It's Chester Elton. It's easy to find. We've got a wonderful gratitude journal, which is our bi-weekly newsletter. In fact, it publishes today about the stories we tell ourselves, right? Lots of free resources at thecultureworks.com. Follow us on LinkedIn. And I'd really encourage you to go to thepowerofkind.org. And, look, it costs nothing to be kind. It doesn't take a lot of time. Create your own little ritual, whether it's a gratitude stone or simply a kind word. And in the workplace, never forget, people have lives. They've got a lot going on. And my dad used to say, Ches, you be kind to everybody. Everybody's having a tough day, right?
Sure.
Everybody's got something. It costs nothing to be kind. And if I am
get back.
working,
You get back what you give out, yeah?
Yeah. And if I'm working for a leader that cares about me and is kind and celebrates my successes while teaching me and helping me through my mistakes,
Sure.
I'm going to give my best. That's my sermon, Teresa, and I'm sticking to it. Can I get an amen?
It's all about mindset, and the habits we formulate and breaking the habits, learning, unlearning, and relearning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I know my listeners are going to love it.
Excellent. It was lovely. Thank you for the invitation, Teresa. I'm honored.
Not at all. Not at all. Thank you so much.